This is the Digital Marketing Experts Podcast episode. No, why am I trying to sound like a radio announcer? Experts in the Wire, episode 51. Michelle Nickolaisen. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 51 of Experts on the Wire, and Happy New Year to everyone. Today you're going to learn about funding a Kickstarter campaign, or really promoting any sort of thing, an event, a new piece of content. My guest, Michelle Nickolaisen, got her Kickstarter funded to 156% of the original goal. You're going to learn about systems for pitching the press, and a kind of a secret trick that my guest reveals, and kind of a mistake a lot of people make actually when pitching publishers via email. You're also going to learn about how to systematize creative, abstract, intuitive, or just kind of complex processes, whether you're trying to do these on your own for your clients, or you're trying to create systems for contractors, freelancers, employers. I want to give a quick shout out to @G.Got_Soul on Twitter. That's @G_GOT_SOUL. Say hello to him on Twitter. He says, man, the episode with Bill Sebald was definitely one of my favorites. Love the touch on music, marketing. The subjects hit home for me. @G.Got_Soul. Thank you so much for the shout out on Twitter. Of course, you can go to evolvingseo.com where you can get all the show notes to all the episodes. I've recently kind of updated the podcast page, evolvingseo.com/wire, and put hopefully some more helpful stuff on there. So check that out, and you can sign up on the email list, and you can subscribe to us on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. With that, I want to get to episode 51 of Experts on the Wire with my guest, Michelle Nickolaisen. Hey everyone, I am very excited to have Michelle Nickolaisen on the wire with us today. Michelle, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excellent. Thank you. I'm very excited to talk to you today about workflows, project management apps, content marketing, and everything. But before we get into that, and especially one thing that I hope the listeners can kind of get a little excited for, is later we're going to talk about your Kickstarter, which was funded to 156% of what you were trying to raise, which is awesome. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. But first, give us a little bit of background on yourself and kind of what you're up to now.
Yeah, so I'll try and keep the story short. I've been freelancing for 7 or 8 years now. I started in 2009, and it was largely a force of circumstance. Like, I had a plan for freelancing, and it did not go according to plan. So I started doing it full time much earlier than I'd planned. And when I started, I was actually freelance writing. And I was working for like content mills. I mean, I was like 19, 20. So I didn't really know how to discern good clients from bad ones. So I got burned out on freelance writing relatively quickly because of the low pay I was working at. And somewhere in there realized that I had a gift for project management and systems, that it's something that comes really naturally to me. One of my friends, it's funny because now we're really close friends now. But one of my friends tweeted a question about how, like, oh, how do you plan things for your month and your quarter? And I was like, oh, I'll email you. And I sent her an email it was like 2,500 words or something. It was massive. And Shanae's like, not everybody does this, right? Like, this is a thing that people do and charge money for. And I was like, what? So I transitioned into freelance project management, and I was working with like lifestyle businesses, a lot of coaches, people doing online memberships and doing project management for them. And there were a couple of key mistakes I was making with my freelancing that contributed to being very burned out at the end of 2013. So I got a job and worked at an agency for 6 months, and I was doing content marketing, which is largely what I'm doing now. So now my business is kind of split into two sides, which is that I do content marketing for B2B software as a service companies, and occasionally also do like copywriting and other kinds of marketing for them. And then on my own side, I do my own projects like the Freelancer Planner Kickstarter, or like I just self-published a novel a couple months ago. I write about freelancing on my blog, which has been sadly a little neglected this year because I've been actually working on projects instead of writing about working on projects. And that's the very short version.
I can completely empathize with that. My blog has faced similar things, and I'm hoping to revive it in 2017. But Let me ask, I like to ask all the writers that come on the show, was writing something you were doing in high school? Was it something you had planned on kind of embarking on anyways?
Yeah, I've been writing since I could basically like hold a pencil. I have I mean, my mom has them, but there are like stories that I wrote when I was in first grade. I was always just like a really voracious reader and just a big nerd. So I was always like writing stories and telling stories. And I was also, it's funny because I can see like all of the threads looking back now. I was like, I have very strong opinions. And so I was like a star student in the current events class, which was basically like debates and opinion paper writing class, which is largely a lot of what I do now. So it's been a recurring theme throughout my whole life.
And so we'll mention them again at the end of the show, but your main website is shellshock.me. And I love the spelling. It's shell like Michelle. So CHELLE shock.me. And then you've got your YouTube channel at Let's Radiate, the username, and freelancerplanner.com. Is there anywhere else I'm missing that kind of represents you on the web? Maybe Twitter? There's
Twitter, which is _shellshock. There's my blog, which has been, like I said, a little neglected, but there's, I mean, like 6 or 7 years or something of archives there at bombshell.com. Also, right. Like, obviously, if I can make a pun off of my name, I'm just going to run with it. So if the word shell is in there, just assume that it's CHELLE. At Twitter, I'm at _shellshock. I think I already said that. And that's the gist of it. I've got a couple of projects I'm working on, but they don't really have like a unified site up yet.
Right.
So
great. Yeah, I wanted to give the listeners kind of a sense of what you're active with online nowadays. Let's jump into talking about systems. So one video I'm going to reference is you gave a talk, I believe, at Rise Austin. It's on your YouTube channel. You began this talk by saying that, in a way, thinking about systems is a little bit anti-Tim Ferriss. Like there's sort of a Tim Ferriss mindset of automate everything, right? And just get that workload completely off your plate. Can you talk about a little bit what you meant there by how this might go anti what Tim Ferriss talks about?
Yeah, I think, so I feel like there's two philosophies when it comes to systems, and that a lot of people who are talking about systems are talking about automating everything so that you don't have to do any work and you're still making money. For me, the way I approach systems, it's much more like automate the things that you can so that you can spend the most time giving that personal touch to the things that are the most important. Like automate the 80% so that you can give 120 on the 20%. I think because there's kind of like the two schools of thoughts, where there's the people who want to automate everything so that they can make money automatically, which, like, let's face it, most of the time just doesn't happen. And then there's the people who are super resistant to the idea of automating anything. And I've noticed this is especially strong in like freelancers who pride themselves on customer service, or agency owners who pride themselves on customer service, or creative types. They think that using systems in their business means everything is going to be automated. Customers are never going to get good customer service because it's just going to come from a machine. They think it means sucking the soul out of their business. So that's a big part of what I'm talking about there, is that it doesn't have to be, when you're talking about systems, it doesn't have to be make everything hands off so that you aren't doing anything. It can be make the things that you're not as good at, or that simply just don't require a human to like push these 3 buttons to make it happen. You can automate that so that you can provide better customer service, or provide better quality, or speed up your email response time, any of those other things that are super important to people.
Got it. Makes sense. So I want to put the systems into context now. You mentioned 3 sort of scenarios: freelancers, agencies, maybe creative types, consultants. I think most of the listeners fall into one of those buckets. So why are systems important for somebody that's creative, or somebody that's a freelancer, or running a small agency like myself?
I think they're really important in any kind of human-focused business, for lack of a better word, because there's only so much time in the day, and especially with freelancers and agency owners, and to some extent creatives, although that kind of depends on like what specifically they're doing. But all of us are really prone to overwork. Like, I know so many people, they're like, well, I just have to work 60-hour work weeks or more if I want to make it as an agency owner. And that's not realistic. It's not sustainable. Like, there's that 1% that can do it and is going to be fine. But for most people, that comes at the expense of their personal life, or at the quality of their work, or putting unreasonable expectations on their employees, or any number of things. So I think that it's really important to go in like super clearly with the mindset of what you can automate. And like I said, like that's one of the things that contributed to my burnout in 2013, where that I there were a couple of things, and it's funny since I'm a systems thinker, but there were a couple of things that I was doing wrong systems wise that I couldn't even see because I was so in the burnout by that point. And so when I went back to freelancing in May of 2014, I got those things locked in from the get-go. And now, like, in the 2.5 years since then, I've had a couple of like RSI flare-ups, but I haven't had an incident where I was just like so burned out I physically could not even think straight.
Yeah, and there's a somewhat of a personal reason that I wanted you on the show, also for the audience, of course. I'm not just doing this just to get one-on-one advice, but what I've found lately is that when I work with a client, that there is some sort of system, even if it's as minimal as like we have a weekly phone call. Those projects tend to, and maybe that doesn't classify as a system technically, but those projects tend to somehow perform better and get better results because there's some kind of process in place. And so in the last few months, and why I'm bringing you on the show, I've become very interested in how systems can actually contribute to people's marketing goals. So have you found that as well? Have you found that scenarios that, I mean, not only in preventing burnout, but when you employ a system that you're actually getting better results?
Yeah. So one of the really big things that I did going back in 2014 was that I completely systematized my pitching efforts, for lack of a better word. So now, like, 95% or more of my work is referral based. But at the beginning, I was basically, I had all of these contacts from my previous years of freelancing, but they weren't necessarily the types of contacts that I was looking for as clients. So I did have like a little bit of a grassroots network to start out with. But largely, I built up my client base by just being really aggressive with pitching. And so in the beginning, what I would do, especially as I was transitioning away from the day job, I would do it on the weekends, but I would send like between 3 and 5 pitches for projects that I saw posted on like the Pro Blogger job board or somewhere else every single day. And to be able to do that, I wrote like a basic pitch email template that was just like, hi, this is who I like, and it had blanks in it so that it wasn't just a blatant copy and paste things like, hi, I'm Michelle and I do this kind of work, please hire me. It was like, it left blanks for customizing based on the ad, but it had like writing samples listed, it had my background listed, and I saved it in Evernote. So when I went to pitch those things, like I would literally just like boot it up, find the 3 ads that I was going to reply to. And if there was one day when there was like 10 things that I had seen listed, I would save the links for the next day and just send out all those pitches. And it only took like an hour and a half. But, when you're pitching that aggressively, like even if only 10% of the people bite, it's going to build up from there. And that's exactly what happened.
I'm glad you bring up the example. I did want to talk about a couple specific examples that may or may not apply to the listeners, whether they're agency, freelance, or whatnot. That pitching one, it sounds like you could take the framework on that and apply it to not only pitching for a job, but pitching maybe the press or for outreach. Yeah. And so can you just break down that process a little bit in more detail for the listeners so maybe they can start to recreate that on their own?
Yeah, and it does work for the press. That's exactly what I used for my Kickstarter during outreach. It was basically the same system. So most systems break down into 3 pieces. There's repeating tasks, there's one-off tasks, and then there's resources that you can pull into the other 2. So in the case of this system, the resource was the pitch email. You could also say the resource was like, I had it automated so that posts from specific job boards would get sent to my email every day via IFTTT, which if you haven't experimented with is super useful. It's just at ifttt.com. From here on out, I might just say IFT because that's faster, but yep. I want to spell it out so readers can find it or listeners can find it. So what I would do, the steps for every day were like check email, find the things from IFTTT, weed out the good ones versus the bad ones, open all of the bad ones in my browser at the same time. Open all the good ones in my browser at the same time. And then find for each one, it was like a separate mini checklist. It's like find the contact name, check out their website to see if there's anything I can pull in from there, tweak the pitch email accordingly, and then send the pitch email. So that one was mostly repeating tasks, but that's basically how I broke it down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to give the listeners a slightly better sense of the details so they can start to kind of recreate that. And how would that apply to pitching the press?
So how it applies to pitching the press is the template's going to be oriented a little bit differently. And it also needs to be modified depending on what kind of person you're talking to. One of the things that I've noticed as a freelance writer, because I get press pitches a lot, and a lot of times they're just not very good. So as you're pitching someone, you need to be aware of, if you're talking to like a blogger who blogs like on their own site, like what we would call an influencer, versus someone like me, where like it's probably a good idea to pitch me your app things, as long as you do it well. But I'm not like a journalist, like I'm a content marketer blogger. And then like the old school journalist. So that's like 3 different kinds of people that you would be pitching, and you need a different template for each one. So the first thing you would start off is to modify the resources depending on the result you want to get. So that would be like creating a template for each one of those, and then keeping some kind of a list organized somewhere of who you're going to pitch, who you have pitched, and like who you need to follow up with. And I used Streak. I use and still use Streak CRM for that, which I believe is just at streak.com. It's Google Apps and Gmail add-on for inbox that makes it super. It basically helps you set up funnels.
And I saw you have a video about that on your YouTube channel, which people can go watch in detail how you have that all set up.
Yeah, it's really great. Sorry, I need it. So from there, it's, you're creating the list of who you're going to reach out to. And with each of those, you want to do some investigation onto like what they've previously wrote about. So using me as an example, I'll get pitches for like apps that are very clearly meant for huge enterprise teams. And the kind of work that I do, like outside of working with freelancers and writing helpful things for freelancers and doing video reviews for freelancers as far as apps, like most of the other places I'm writing are not targeting huge enterprise organizations. It's like I'm talking to teams of like 10 to 25. So if you've done your research on me, you know that, and you know that pitching me an enterprise app that costs, $700 a month is probably not going to get results, but I get pitches for those. And then I also get pitches for things like, I got something about like an educational app for kindergartners, and they wanted me to do a YouTube review. And I was like, no, sorry. So it's like separating out the pitch templates, creating a list of people, and then doing research to make sure that they're a good fit. And you can also, from there, you can go even deeper. It depends on what philosophy you're going with. If you're trying to email as many people as possible, or trying to email as few people as possible and make sure that they're like absolutely perfect. And I would say probably find some place in the middle.
That's a great.
And then,
sorry, I was going to say that's a great framework. Go ahead.
I think that's everything. I think that's most of it.
I want to dig in a little too. If thinking about like, we're a small agency here, about 3 people, a couple contractors. We deal with, anywhere from 5 to 10 clients at a time. What are some system basics or mistakes that you see agencies or small agencies of my size kind of making? Where can I start to kind of get started or improve maybe existing systems I might have in place?
I think the biggest mistake is people thinking that they're too small to systematize, which is really easy to do. Like I've seen freelancers say it, or it's this, well, I'm going to hire so-and-so to do this thing eventually, so I don't need to create a system right now because I'll just make them do it when I hire them. Something like that. So that's like a big mistake, but there's always places to start with. I would definitely recommend client follow-up is super easy to systematize, and it also has a great return on investment most of the time. So that just looks like creating, the one-off tasks, the recurring tasks, and the templates for that would be like getting in touch 1 month after working together, depending on the scope of work. Like if it was a little project 1 month, if it was a huge rebrand, getting in touch 1 month later is too soon, but like 1 month or 3 months or 6 months. So creating communication templates for each of those with like an upsell or an offer, and then tasking it out. So like every project that you create has like a 90-day check-in after it's done.
So one of your tips there sounds like this is a mistake that I've made for literally 6 years probably, which is I was more or less solo for most of that time. Now we have one full-time and my wife works with us as well, and she does a lot for the business. But I sort of operated on this doing everything from scratch every single time I did it. But you're saying that even things that I still just do myself now, even though I have some help, I should be systematizing those things and just prepping for the day when I might have help with those?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it for a couple of reasons. If it's something that you're doing every day, like honestly, that might be something that you can put off systematizing a little bit. Like that's not as big of a deal. But the things that really get to where they trip you up are the things that you're doing like once a month or every other month or once every 3 months. Because what happens, at least with me, what happens is I go to do that thing and like I can remember the first step, but I can't really remember the second step. And from there, like it's just all foggy. So I have to go look up how to do each thing as I'm doing it. And it takes me, like 3 or 4 times longer than it should. What should be a 5 or 10-minute task winds up derailing me for like an hour. So there's that side of things. And then there's also the side of things that part of the reason that people put off hiring people or working with assistants is because onboarding is such a pain. But if you have all of this stuff documented already, then the onboarding process for a new person just got so much easier because you don't have to like handhold them for the first 6 weeks and explain to them how everything is done. You can, obviously there's still going to be some handholding, but like you can share them the Google Drive that has all of these documents and be like, okay, all of your daily tasks are in here. All of these are documents on how to do them. Each document has a quick screencast link that you can watch if you're not confused. If you're still confused after you read the how-to steps and you watch the screencast, then like come get your supervisor. And that saves everybody's time by like 1,000,000%.
Speaking of onboarding, client onboarding is something I've noticed that requires way more steps than I ever would have anticipated. There's the billing and then the getting the payment, and sometimes there's a tax ID and a W-9, and then there's getting analytics and Webmaster Tools access, maybe WordPress access. You have to explain to them that you need all the versions of their domain for Webmaster Tools, and so on and so on and so forth. So what's a way that somebody like me or other agencies or SEO providers can start to maybe put the client onboarding into a bit of a system?
So I would recommend client onboarding is another one of the areas that you can really get a lot out of systematizing. That's like always the second thing I recommend after client follow-up. So the best thing that I have found for this is to write up a to-do list. Like write it up as soon after you've done it as you can, and then let it sit for like a couple of days and keep it on your desk or somewhere visible. Like if you type it up, it can be on your desktop or on a bookmarked tab or something, so that you see it every time you open your browser. And what you'll find is that after you let it sit for a couple of days, you'll be keeping like, oh yeah, I forgot this step. So once you've let it sit for a couple of days and you've added in like all of the steps and it's really comprehensive, like A to Z checklist, then you can put that honestly, you can leave it in a Google Doc and leave it as a checklist just so that it's there and you have it. If you use something like Asana or Trello, you can create a template, like you can create a card in Trello or create a checklist in Asana. And then that way, the next time you get a client, you can just like copy that and, onboarding checklist client A, instead of having to remember all of those steps individually.
And how do you say I want to train somebody to do all those steps? Do I make separate instructions to go with that, or make video tutorials to go along with the checklist? How would you actually teach somebody those steps?
Yeah, it depends. The video tutorials depends on how you want to do it. I find that they're honestly a lot faster because you're doing it as you're showing it. And there are so many tools. There's Screencast-O-Matic. There's some tool, I can't remember the name right now. If I remember it, I'll email it.
Jing for 5-minute videos.
Yeah, there's Jing, and then there's another one, like Screen Grab, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I'll find it later. But it lets you save as GIFs, so you can like embed a GIF in a Google Doc, and that's kind of cool because then you have like the text and the video like right next to each other in the same doc.
That is very cool. I was wondering how to do that. I totally am going to go use that like today.
Yeah. I'll find the name and send it to you so you can put it in the notes. But yeah, I find that video is great as a starter. And then if you have the time, adding to the list, like actually writing it out is better later on. But in the beginning, when you're just trying to get over that like initial resistance of setting up the systems, doing a video is like super easy. It's super fast. And then you can type it up later, or if you're really short on time, you can send it to someplace like rev.com that charges like $1 a minute for transcripts. So getting like 10 different videos that are 2 minutes each is only going to cost you like $20-25, and then you can just like copy and paste that transcript, and it's super easy. And that way, like, it's the same thing where a lot of times it's easier for people to see it like for the first time watching the video, and they can pause and rewind But if later on they realize that they forgot a step and they aren't sure which step they forgot, then it's easier to find it in like text and scan via text.
That transcription, that's a really great tip. I want to ask one last question about systems in general. Then we're going to talk about Trello. We're going to talk about some content. And then I want to get to that Kickstarter campaign. What are your thoughts on either a more creative task or sort of critical thinking task, and especially thinking of freelancers and creatives? Like, for example, one thing we do here a lot is design the site architecture of a new website. We have to do the keyword research. We have to align that with URLs. We have to figure out the keyword targets and, should this page be a blog page or an article or evergreen? And there's a lot of like sort of this like abstract creative thinking that goes into that. One person might do it linearly. One person might do it sort of, like I do it, like kind of jump from one thing to another and kind of do them sort of as I go, keep a lot of it in my head. Like, what are your thoughts on systematizing something that seems like it's just very abstract and takes a lot of critical thinking? Is there a way to do that?
It's really hard. I would be lying if I said that this was like easy even for me. This is actually, this is kind of a case in point for me right now, because I have a podcast, a serialized fiction series, and then books 2 and 3 in the same series as my novel that I'm trying to outline. And I have like sort of the basics of it in my head. And I have a task in Asana that's supposed to be reminding me to work on the outlining daily, because I know that for me, I outline before I write, and it just works so much better for me. And it just keeps getting moved from day to day. And part of it is that breaking it down into smaller tasks makes a big difference. So something that I'll do instead of like working on the outlining is like map out the story beats that I do have, or like decide, which folklore I'm going to reference in this book, and like do 30 minutes of research on that. So I find that with the abstract tasks, what's helpful is breaking it down into smaller pieces. And then if you can't break it down into anything more concrete, giving it a time limit helps. So like look at competitor sites for inspiration for 15 minutes, or for inspiration / what not to do. 15 minutes on that, or like 15 minutes on brainstorming for XYZ. And that makes it feel a lot more concrete and a lot easier to approach, because part of it is that if we have this task and we don't know how long it's going to take, then we instinctively put off doing it because it's an unknown, because it could take 10 minutes, it could take 2 hours. And it's just like our brains don't really like things like that. We like tiny pieces, tiny bites of things. So break it down as much as you can, even though it's abstract, like break it down into the parts of the process. So if your creation process looks like research and absorption, and then outlining, and then writing, then, spend 30 minutes every day for a week on research and absorption, then like 30 minutes every day for a week on working on the outline, and then, so on and so forth.
I've noticed just trying to come up with systems makes me better at the actual work as well.
Yeah.
So that's another positive to all of this. Even if you never delegate it out, I think you can just get a lot better at what you're doing. So I want to talk a little bit about Trello. These are your most popular videos by far on YouTube. I think one of them has almost close to 100,000 views. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I know it's a very popular tool. Just to begin with, some Trello. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with Trello. We've mentioned it probably dozens of times on the show. It's a very visual, sort of card-based app, and it's very flexible. You can do a lot of things with it. But can you pick out maybe a few uncommon or unconventional or maybe untypical ways that people can use Trello that they may not have discovered?
Yeah, so there's so many things you can use it for. I've seen it used a lot for, and this is like, it's not uncommon, but it might not be something that people have thought of if you aren't like a freelance writer in the industry. People use it a lot for editorial calendars, and it's really great for managing multiple writers. Like if you run an agency, or if you're starting to run your blog and you're accepting guest posts or anything like that. And it's great because you can switch back and forth between a calendar view and like the column-based view. So the way that I've seen it work there is like there's a column for ideas, and then there's like 3 or 4 columns for the various stages of like outlining, draft 1, draft 2, complete, scheduled. So when someone claims an idea, there's like a date added to it so that it can go on the editorial calendar, and so that when you switch to the editorial calendar view, you can see it all laid out neatly over a calendar for the next couple months. And then it moves across the board from left to right. as it progresses. So there's that. It's good for sort of like brainstorming and inspiration. A friend and I were working on a creative partnership, and we used Trello versus something more structured or more linear, I guess, like Asana, just because it's really easy to like get a whole bunch of ideas down really fast, get, like all of the, like, you can just hit enter and keep typing, and then you can drag cards around and rearrange. You can also use it for outlining. If you don't want to use one of the like more linear outlining tools, you can actually use Trello for outlining by like putting the basic idea on the front of the card and then putting more notes like on the quote unquote back of the card, the information that you get when you click on. And then like from there, you can have like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then drag and drop and rearrange the cards that have the major events like on each one.
Yeah, I've found that Trello is really good at just getting ideas out fast because it's so quick. What I've found on the flip side, though, is using it as sort of my more. So I do use Asana for all my more robust task management. You have a great video about managing multiple projects in Trello, which seems to be more of sort of a robust use of that tool. So how could one be using Trello to maybe manage multiple projects or for something a little more concrete than just kind of getting ideas out quickly?
Yeah. Also, full disclosure, I use Asana for the more robust tasks too. And they did add a board feature, which if you're listening is probably worth checking out. I'm not sure if it's available on the free plans, but I think it is.
It is. I have.
Yeah, I need to play around with it. Yeah. So it kind of depends on what you're using it for. I have noticed a lot of agencies using it, and the way they do that is they set up a separate board for each client. The one thing with it is that, and they might have changed this, but I don't think they do because I check back on it every couple of months, is that you can't really see, like, there's no way to see a unified calendar with all of the tasks on it. So you will probably need to like set ample reminders, because I know for me, that's the main thing that's made me use Asana over everything else, is because I have to see it on a calendar or else I just totally space on it. Like I just can't rely on myself to repeatedly like check multiple places and make sure that nothing is coming up. I have to be able to see everything on a unified calendar.
Yeah.
But if you're using it, it's really good for like working with different clients, especially because it's not as intimidating as something like Asana. To someone who is like completely new to project management, Asana can be really confusing. Whereas Trello is more like obvious. It's like, oh, it's drag and drop and I can do it on my phone with like my fingers, and this is super easy. So it's great for like client work, having different boards for each client. It's great for if you're running like multiple blogs at once, if you're running like a content agency. It's great for that, for having the editorial calendar. And then you do just have to get in the habit of like, you might have like all of these other boards for each one for each blog, and then have a reminder in a separate board to like go through and check all of your boards at like 9 a.m. every morning or something. And that's really the main thing that's going to make it, I think, more robust and more usable for something like that, is just getting in the habit of checking all of the boards to make sure that there aren't any upcoming deadlines that you've totally spaced on, because that's what I do.
Yeah, I love using Asana for the calendar view, and also I can just view all my tasks by due date, just kind of order them that way. So I want to tie up all the app stuff with a nice bow. And what are your other kind of favorite or must-have management tools for maybe a client service or a freelance SEO provider?
So I do, like I said, I love Asana. I use a ton of apps for my email. Streak and Mixmax are probably my two favorite. That's Mix, MAX. And I haven't done a video on that just because it does so many things, but it lets you use templates, and then you can insert templates with short codes. So that's really useful.
Is that tool paid or free?
They have paid plans, but they have a very robust free plan.
And that's Mixmax.
You can get a ton out of it using the free plan.
And Streak is the one you said is more like a CRM?
Yeah. It's intended. Sorry, go ahead.
Do either one of those relate to Boomerang in any way, or is Boomerang separate?
They're separate. They do have some overlap in functionality, but as far as I know, Streak and Boomerang are separate teams. But both Streak and Mixmax let you snooze emails in the same way that Boomerang does.
Okay.
And I think the paid versions of Mixmax allow for similar CRM functionality to Streak. I don't know, since I'm not a paid user, but they have paid plans that start at like $10 or $20 a month. So if someone wanted something really unified, I would definitely say check out Mixmax. If you're okay using a couple separate free tools, then Streak and Mixmax together is going to be perfectly good for the majority of people. So Asana, Streak, Mixmax. I also use something called Atext, which is sort of a tiny version of a text expander, and it's really useful for creating shortcuts for, like, if you're going to be using the same link over and over again, or like with the Kickstarter. One of the things that I did was send out thank you tweets. So like TYTW, if I type that, it expands into like a full thank you tweet where all I have to do is add the username and add the backer number.
So does that text expander, is that platform agnostic? Does it kind of work everywhere, you mean?
I think Text Expander is available for Mac and Windows. And Text Expander is like $40 or $50, and you can do a lot of complex things with it. The app that I specifically use is Atext, and it's like $5 or something. Like it's, and I'll probably switch to Text Expander at some point because I feel like I could probably get more mileage out of it.
And that the thank you tool that you mentioned for Twitter, that works no matter if you're in Twitter or email, just anywhere you're doing text on your machine.
Yeah. The way Atext works is it's anywhere you're doing text. So you could like theoretically have like your pitch email templates stored in there too. And I think I actually might have done that. I have like a whole folder in there for the Kickstarter. So maybe when we talk about that later, I'll pull that open and we can look through and see what other stuff was in there because it was a lot.
That'd be great. I want to jump to just the last tool I know you've talked about is CoSchedule. It's on your YouTube channel. I've mentioned CoSchedule dozens of times, I think, on the show. Correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, but I think I've mentioned it a lot because it's a great, now CoSchedule is it a plugin for WordPress? Is that what this tool is?
I believe it's a plugin for WordPress. They might have expanded to other platforms, but I'm only familiar with it. I use WordPress on like everything, and that's how I'm familiar with it. And
so for the listeners out there that are doing content marketing or writing, how is CoSchedule a tool that they can utilize?
CoSchedule is really useful, especially if you're offering the kind of service where like you're managing the social shares. A lot of the writing that I do, I'm being pulled onto an existing team. So CoSchedule, like I don't get to use CoSchedule as much, but if you have like the kind of administrative power where you can like install a plugin on a client's WordPress blog and then like take ownership of it, CoSchedule is incredibly useful because it lets you manage multiple blogs all from within a unified database. And so it shows you the posts that are upcoming, but it also shows you how many social shares are scheduled for each post. And so it supports every major platform. And the great thing is that it has an interface, it has like a web interface of its own, but you can also add to everything from inside WordPress as you're writing a post. And so it makes the after you publish checklist so much easier to do because you don't have to like go between 3 different social schedulers. You write the post inside WordPress, and then like you just scroll down a little bit and you can schedule tweets, and it lets you do like tweets for the day of, tweets for the day after, and then you can custom schedule tweets, but it also like prompts you for, 2 or 3 weeks later or a month later, and then like 2 or 3 months later. So it's great that you don't have to remember to like, oh, I should, periodically tweet out my old posts so that like I'm still getting mileage off of them. You just schedule it all at once in CoSchedule. And then you can check in like every now and then on the main interface to make sure that like 2 posts aren't going out at the same time on Facebook or something, or on Twitter. Like if you aren't publishing like 2 things like back to back. It's just a really useful streamlined interface for people who need to manage content publication and social media marketing.
Sounds like a very cool tool. I definitely want to check it out a little bit more. Also, you mentioned on a LinkedIn article, you had a really great tip for one thing that I've been trying to do. I've started an email newsletter here for this podcast, evolvingseo.com/wire, for anybody that wants to sign up, little plug there. But I have found it tricky to just catalog all my ideas that I have throughout the week. And whether it's for your newsletter or for your blog or for a marketing campaign, you mentioned a great tip for how to kind of catalog these ideas as you go. And tell us about that tip. What tool did you use and how does it work?
So I use Evernote. At one point I was using something that was a little more complex because I was like, I used to be really good at keeping up on my RSS reader. I'm really bad at it now. So Evernote and Feedly play nice with each other, and so does Pocket, right? So I used to have a very organized system where like from Feedly or from Pocket, I could auto save to Evernote and tag it with newsletter, or copy and paste the URL into a living document that I have called newsletter in Evernote. And then at the end of the week, when it comes to it, I would just go there and like pull the links out. Since I'm bad at keeping up with my RSS reader, and now most of the articles that I find are either through social media or through like the Slack channels that I'm in, I mostly just keep that one living document going and just add URLs to it. And then when it's time to write my newsletter, I just like pull it up and I write a couple sentences about each one. And sometimes I add notes in the Evernote document too. There was something that I just found earlier today that might actually be super useful here. I was writing an article on useful Chrome plugins, and there's a Chrome plugin called Candy Bank. And it looks like it would be really useful for this because it's visual bookmarking, so similar to the Evernote Clipper, but with like added meta information, and you can also highlight several things from the article and include that in the bookmark automatically. Oh, cool. So I feel like that would be super useful in this kind of use case as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to check out that plugin as well. I have to admit, and my listeners, you can make fun of me all you want, but I tried to get into Evernote. I didn't really get it, to be honest, at the time it came out. I remember checking it out. I don't hear much about it anymore. Is it still popular? Do you still like it?
I think it's still popular. I think, in my opinion, Evernote has an onboarding problem. I don't know if onboarding is even the right word. They created a tool that's very open-ended and very powerful. And the thing is that people are they see so many things that they could potentially do with Evernote that they don't know where to start, and they get overwhelmed. And Evernote doesn't really like walk you through separate use cases. So that's something that I've noticed. And when I talk about Evernote, I try to specifically mention use cases to kind of offset that.
Yeah, that would have been helpful, because I remember I went to sign up and tried it out, and I didn't know what to do with it. It just seemed like this open, empty vacuum that I could just throw anything, and I couldn't make sense of it.
Yeah. And it's definitely, that's like a super common reaction. So you're definitely not alone in that. And yeah, like it's like you first log in and you're like, okay, like I can add tasks, but I can also add reminders, and I can do text things, and I can do bookmarks, and like, how do I make all of this work into something that's organized and that isn't just like a mess? Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear it's still popular. I might give it another try at some point. I want to jump to a little bit about content and writing, and then save about 10, 15 minutes for the Kickstarter campaign. But you are a writer as well. I know a lot of the listeners love to try to improve their content marketing and their writing. One thing that you do mostly or all entirely B2B writing, if I'm correct with that. And so you mentioned that you strive to deliver content that's informative, but also entertaining and interesting as well. So how does somebody pull that off? Because sometimes they try to get interesting and entertaining. They go too far in that direction, and then it's not even useful. So how do you strike that balance between informative yet entertaining in your writing?
So there's a couple good rules of thumb. One really basic thing is you want to follow the rules of the internet as far as making it scannable. And a lot of people, especially people who are like old school writers, tend to have some resistance to this. Like they feel like it downgrades the intellectualism of the writing, which is not the case. It's a completely different medium than print. And even in print, like, people don't typically make 3-page paragraphs because it's hard to read. Your eyes will physically get fatigued. Like, there have been studies done on it. It's really interesting. So, following like bolding, bullet points, headers, a lot of these things are also good for SEO. So just the basics of that is one key thing. Another thing is to write like you talk. So this is especially a problem with like B2B consultants or agencies, is that
all the lingo comes out.
Yeah. Like, it gets very jargon heavy. And the thing is that most of the time when you're talking to when you're talking to a person, the jargon doesn't necessarily come out. Or if it does, you very quickly know to course correct, because they get a funny look on their face because you lost them, and you know where you lost them. But if somebody's reading a blog post, like, you don't know where you lost them. You just know that they're not finishing it and they are converting to a lead or to a customer after reading a blog post. So what helps is to have like a conversation with a person. Like, this is a very easy to do trick, but it's great for people who want to get better at blog post writing, who aren't necessarily like natural writers or haven't been writing, for years and years and years, is to like have a conversation with somebody and then record it. And then either you can transcribe it, or you can send it to like I said, Rev or something, and get like a 30-minute transcription for $30. And then you can probably get, so many blog posts from that, especially if you talk fast, like I do. So, you can get a lot of blog posts from it.
What I love that tip. And it's I've noticed that after I teach something or consult with somebody and then I go write a post about it, it's oftentimes one of my most easiest sort of flowing things I've written because I've just spoken through it.
Yeah.
But when people speak, they're not always entertaining. So how can somebody be entertaining and remove the jargon in their content?
So I think that I think a lot of the times the speaking does help here, although obviously not always, just because people tend to naturally infuse their personality when they speak. This is also something that's kind of like, I mean, you can be more intentional about that as well. You can like make a list of your favorite things and incorporate a couple of them into a blog post. You know, like that sounds cheesy, but just you want to give people a sense of who you are, and a lot of times that makes it entertaining. This is something that's very specific and sounds a little weird, but writing shorter sentences tends to be more engaging and keep people more interested. Unless you're like writing a long sentence for the sake of comedy, right? So I'm thinking of all these random tips, and they aren't really coming together coherently.
Well, one thing I want to highlight and maybe give you a second to think about it is on your YouTube About page. You exemplify this very well. You've got a paragraph about what you do, but then you say more about me. I'm a freelance writer. I live in Austin, Texas, and my brain's starting to go, okay, this is normal. But then you say, I have a Shiba Inu and a kitten named after Bruce Banner, parentheses, which, as it turns out, was a mistake since she apparently took it as instructions to destroy my personal property at any opportunity. And I'm laughing out loud reading that. But the sentence that starts so common, you wind up at this completely random thought, but I do feel like I know more about you, and it entertained me. I got a laugh out of that. So maybe just by the listeners hearing that might inspire them. But what was your thought process there to write that sentence? Was it, I'm getting kind of, ordinary, I need to kind of put a little twist on it? Or how did you come up with a sentence like that?
Yeah, I think that, so part of that is just like, that's my personality. And like, there's it's a true story. My cat is a hellion. But like, it's something of an element of it's like an element of your personality plus an element of the unexpected. So, and you do want to moderate that to some extent, because there are very few people, like most of us are not going to be the Gary V's of the world who are like constantly yelling and, saying a catchphrase like every other word. That just doesn't work for most of us. So you want to like have your personality and sort of try and think of something that's like a distilled, like get some of your friends to describe you, because it doesn't have to be, my personality is like loud and snarky and pop culture referencey. But your personality might be like completely different. You might be referencing like Greek philosophers, and that's totally cool. Like whatever works for you, but it's like some distilled parts of your personality and then making it like adding it in at unexpected places. So like that's kind of the part that's kind of part of it.
It's unexpected. That's exactly right. And one thing I've noticed, and then we'll go on to the Kickstarter campaign, is I've learned to take note what people react to and how face to face. And again, it goes back to that conversation. If I say something on a phone call with a client and I hear them go, I get that, then I say, okay, I just explain that in a way that maybe makes sense. Or if I say something and they kind of laugh or chuckle, I'll make a mental note of that and then put that into the writing. I sometimes I find just kind of testing out in conversation can give that as well. And I love those tips. And sorry, is there one thing you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, sorry, I just thought of one more thing. I was going to say another thing, and I think that this is part of why it's so hard for me to deconstruct, because it is something that I've more like intuitively learned, is that I think reading or listening to, because I listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts anymore versus like actually reading it. But listening to stories is also going to naturally make you a much more engaging writer, especially if you're listening to like really engaging stories. So the kind of stories that I like are, like engaging and like have really snappy dialogue and are fast paced. And I think that reflects in both my fiction and my nonfiction writing. And it's going to give you a much better feel for like story beats. And when you can add something in that's unexpected, there's a podcast called Welcome to Night Vale. And it's like it's impossible to describe, but it's really incredible. And this is one of the things that they do, is that the concept of the show is that it's a town where every conspiracy theory is real. And so the announcer will say, with like this totally deadbeat voice, like list a whole bunch of normal things. And then there's one totally off the wall thing, like, oh, and the sheriff's secret police did da 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 da. And you're like, wait, what? And it's like, it keeps you from getting bored, and it also makes you laugh and keeps you like engaged. And so I think that that's something that a lot of nonfiction writers can incorporate as well.
Yeah, I love that tip. To that kind of crossover fiction and nonfiction and vice versa can be really good as well. Okay, I want to jump to the Kickstarter, and to first back up with this a little bit. You did a Kickstarter for, I believe it was your first product,
Yes.
called Freelancer Planner. We'll link to that in the show notes so everyone can go check that out and get a feel for that. But let's jump right to this Kickstarter story here. You were able to get 156% of what you were trying to go for with the campaign. So what were the things that worked to achieve beyond your goal with the Kickstarter?
So, excuse me, I am pulling up my statistics. So one of the things that I noticed was that social media was actually more effective than content marketing for this.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and I expected it to be the other way around. What I did for content marketing was I made sure to regularly post things that obviously were related but not purely promotional to my site. I cross-posted some older posts onto Medium with sort of a updated post and with an intro and outro about the Kickstarter. And I also did some guest posts. And I think the guest posts drove a fair amount of that. I'm looking to see if I have those specific stats. I think the guest posts did draw things.
I would guess that posting on your own sites would probably just kind of overlap with your existing audience, whether they follow you on social or email. So probably the guest post helps you leap to like a new audience, I would guess.
Yeah, so the stats that I have, and it does get a little tricky with Kickstarter because their analytics are not as good as like someone who's an analytic nerd like I would like to be able to have. So there's like about 31% of my backers were direct referral traffic, which is kind of like mystery traffic because it could come from an email or from someone using a short link or whatever. I had about 5% of total backers come from content marketing, counting my posts as well as guest posts, but I had almost 24% of backers came from social media.
Oh,
so
wow.
I think that's the biggest, I think that was the biggest chunk from any one thing.
So let's break apart social media a little bit. What channels and what types of things were you doing on social? And I imagine there must be a component, like I said, to get to new people that maybe hadn't heard of you.
Yeah, so Facebook, what I did, and what I noticed was that some of it was coming from Facebook shares of articles. So there were some like PR type articles, and I can dive more into that as well. And I have all of these notes written up in a couple of blog posts that I can send you so that people can read over all of these stats in like great detail. But I posted daily or very close to daily updates on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And almost every time I posted about it, people shared the posts. And I also did a pay with a share option to download a one-page printable. So there was a $1 backer level, and then there was the pay with the share. So the thinking was like, you can back for $1, or you can tweet about it or post about it on Facebook, and then you get this one-page printable. I changed all of my social profile links to drive traffic back to the campaign. I also embedded like click to tweet and click to share buttons on the campaign page. And one of the things that I did that was really surprisingly helpful was doing thank you tweets, which I mentioned earlier. And so they would just say, big thanks to backer number blank, and then tag the backer, and then say, learn more about the Freelancer Planner and back it here with a short link to the Kickstarter. And what happened with those was that it worked on a couple different factors because it was a good way for me to tweet about it regularly without being just like, hey guys, back my thing. And the other thing was that the people who got tagged really appreciated it. And so they would typically tweet me back and be like, oh, thanks, or retweet it. So that was like a nice, authentic way to get the word out there without just constantly shouting about myself. There were some industry specific, the best results that I got as far as PR went were industry specific blogs, so there was one that I got that was Creative Block, and they did a big bump in percentages. And the biggest thing that I noted there was that, which is something that I was lucky because I have experience on both sides of this, is that if you're pitching people who are busy and who have to like write 1 million posts a day, the best thing you can do is include everything they need to write the post in one email, so that if they want to get more information, they can like write back and ask more questions. But the creative block article, which is like a design focused online magazine, they just like, it was like I sent the pitch via their contact form. And then like a day and a half later, the blogger emailed me back and was like, hey, thanks for sending this in. We wrote an article about it. Here it is. And I was like, oh, cool.
Awesome.
And it was because I had all of the information. Like I had the link, the info, the inspiration, like a couple of stats on freelancing and burnout and being underpaid. And so they could just pull all of that straight from the email and put it into a little article. And then that was it.
I want to mention to listeners too that this doesn't only apply to doing a Kickstarter or promoting a Kickstarter, but it could be anything. And other things that strike me might be an event, or maybe you're like a podcast even, or maybe the launch of something. So it seems like sort of this PR approach combined with social, combined with Facebook and things could probably work in a variety of scenarios. Now, what do you think was working on Facebook? You mentioned a lot of the social referrals coming from there in combination with the PR. So can you break down Facebook a little bit? Was this you posting on your Facebook page? Were you running, I know you said you didn't do any ads, so you weren't running any ads, but was this other Facebook account sharing it? How did that work exactly?
So I think some of it was because of the people who like Creative Block, right? I think that and I believe, I could be wrong, but I think in the post that they wrote about the article, they also included a direct link to the campaign. So I believe that was a factor. The Facebook thing is honestly a little bit of a mystery to me, just because the analytics like don't let you drill down super, super specific. As far as I can tell, most of it came from the backers backers sharing that they had backed it, being like, hey, I just backed this thing. And I remember getting a lot of those posts because they would usually tag me or tag my business page. And the posts that I did post about it on my business page, like a lot of them did fairly well and got shared a lot of times. Like the benefit that I have here is that since I have been freelancing for, 7 or 8 years, I have a very healthy online community of people who have like done favors for and who, are willing to be supportive. And they were sharing on Facebook quite a bit, and it got out in front of a lot of new people because of that.
Yeah, makes sense. So, Michelle, we're going to wrap up the episode in just a moment. I have a phone call with a client coming up, which sometimes happens with these interviews. They bump up next to each other. But tell us again where we can find your product, the Freelancer Planner, and your blog, and where, if people can follow you online, where all those places are.
Yeah, so the Freelancer Planner is at www.freelancerplanner.com. I'm getting ready to do a second round of printing in January via an Indiegogo, but there are still some of the smaller version of the planners available for purchase. I'm also at bombshell.com. Shellshock.me is my writing portfolio. I'm on Twitter at _shellshock. And then I have some books in the Amazon store. I have my dystopian urban fantasy book, and also a book on implementing systems for micro businesses. So you can find both of those by searching for Michelle Nickolaisen at Amazon. And I think that's it.
Very cool. We'll put all those links in the show notes for people in their cars or walking their dogs. Two last fun questions, actually. You mentioned liking TV shows and chocolate. So can you give us a favorite out of each one of those?
Yeah, I really like so Green and Black is good chocolate. I like the 75-80% one. There's also one with endangered animals on it. Yeah, I like the dark chocolate.
Endangered species chocolate, yep.
Yeah. And then for TV shows, I really like the DC CW verse TV shows like Flash, Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow. Those are all super fun. I'm watching Westworld right now, and then I like the classics. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a classic favorite of mine.
I'm going to give a quick plug to the show Chance with Hugh Laurie. That was a Hulu exclusive. My wife and I just watched the whole first season, It was originally based upon a book, a fiction book. Really good writing, suspense, kind of psychological show for anybody that's into that, or maybe yourself, Michelle, if you want to check that out. Yeah, it's really good. I like Hugh Laurie a lot as well. But with that, we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to take my client phone call in just a moment. It was great chatting with you, and appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll see everyone next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Bye.